When I moved to Mexico 30 years ago now, I thought Día de Muertos was just Mexican Halloween. Dark, spooky, kind of morbid. I couldn't have been more wrong. It isn't about fear or costumes even. It's something much more special. In this episode, I'll show you where Día de Muertos comes from, and what the altar means. And yes, what it means when people dress themselves up as elegant skeletons. And if you stick around, you'll find out how James Bond, of all things, influenced Día de Muertos forever. So, grab yourself a little chocolatl, some pan de muertos, and let's take a real look at Día de Muertos. So first, let's break down what Halloween and Día de Muertos really are. Halloween began with an old Celtic festival called Samhain, when people believed that the dead could cross back for one night. Centuries later, it blended with medieval Christian holidays like All Hallows Day and All Souls Day, and over time it evolved into what we call Halloween, the eve of All Hallows Day, a night of costumes, candy, and a few good scares. Halloween's definitely one of my favorite nights of the year. Ask anyone. It's a chance to dress up, put on a mask, and have a little fun for a while. But Día de Muertos, well, it's also a blend, but very different. It's not about fear, it's about connection, a bridge between the living and the loved ones we've lost. It grew out of ancient indigenous rituals honoring the dead, later blending with Catholic All Saints and All Souls Days, two worlds coming together into one tradition. Here, families don't fear the spirits, they welcome them home. Now, both holidays touch on life and death, but Día de Muertos celebrates love, not fright. And sure, it's gotten a little more commercial. Lots of decoration and themed food. But underneath it all, it's still about remembering and honoring those who came here before us. Quick break. If you like stories like this, where myths, legend, history, and mysteries all come together, you know what to do so you don't miss out on any more. And that subscribe button should be down here somewhere. It's the purple one. Now, the origins of Día de Muertos go way back, long before the Spanish arrived. The Mexica, or Aztecs, already had festivals to honor the dead. They had Mictēcacihuātl, the Little Feast, and Mictēcacihuātl, the Great Feast, celebrations that fell around midsummer on our calendar. They were part of sacred months called Tlaxochimaco, the offering of flowers, and Xocotl, the falling fruit. And these weren't quiet vigils, they were lively festivals with dancing, music, and food. Offerings of flour and food were made to Mictlán, the Lord of the Underworld, as people called out to their ancestors to return. To the Mexica, death wasn't an ending. It was a continuation of life's cycle. The living honored the dead, and the dead protected the living. And watching over it all was Mictēcacihuātl, the Lady of the Dead, guiding souls through Mictlán, the many levels of the underworld, until they reached peace. These ancient rituals, filled with flowers, food, and connection between worlds, became the roots of what we now call Día de Muertos. And did I rehearse those names in Nahuatl and maybe record them 4 or 5 times? Quema. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, indigenous festivals for the dead were relocated to match dates on the Catholic calendar. Over time, these two worlds blended, giving us what we have now as Día de Muertos. Historians call that process cultural syncretism, when two belief systems meet and form something new. It's kind of like building a house on an old foundation. The structure above ground changes, but traces of the original in the foundation are still there. And those layers of faith, art, and identity shape the symbols we know today. And one of the most famous symbols, you will definitely recognize her, became the face of the celebration itself. The elegant skeleton that we see everywhere this time of year. At parades, parties, even on Halloween costumes, didn't actually start out as part of Día de Muertos. She began as a cartoon by José Guadalupe Posada around 1910, making fun of social climbers who tried to hide their indigenous roots. Back then, she was called La Calavera Garbancera. Decades later, Diego Rivera, yes, Frida Kahlo's husband, painted her into his mural Dream of a Sunday Afternoon in the Alameda Central and gave her the name La Catrina, from the word Catrín, a word for a fancy, status-obsessed gentleman, a dandy. Posada's skull and a European hat made one clear point. Death does not care how rich you are or what status you have. And Rivera turned her into something larger, Mexico's wit about mortality, elegant, ironic, and unmistakably Mexican. But there's something even more ancient in her. When women paint their faces like skulls and wear cempasúchil flowers, they're in a way channeling Mictēcacihuātl, the Mexica Lady of the dead who ruled Mictlán. So today's Catrinas carry both spirits, Posadas and Rivera's satire, and Mictēcacihuātl's ancient power blended into one symbol that makes death feel not just beautiful, but familiar. And now she's everywhere, painted, sculpted, and paraded through the streets. The parade of the Catrinas in Mexico City is massive, but more on that in a minute. The centerpiece of Día de Muertos is the Ofrenda, the altar. It's not just decoration, it's an invitation, a doorway opened with candles, flowers, and memories welcoming spirits back home. Every element has meaning. The cempasúchil flowers guide them with their scent and color. Candles light the path, and food nourishes them for the journey. It's personal, and every altar tells a different story. Who the departed were, what they loved, and what still connects them to us today. One thing I love about Día de Muertos is that every family who celebrates in a different way. Some ofrendas are elaborate, with 7 levels, often said to represent the soul's journey through the afterlife. That idea blends indigenous beliefs with Catholic traditions, each level marking a step toward peace, or as some say, the 7 deadly sins to overcome. Others are simple, a photo, a candle, maybe a shot of tequila. The point is, it's personal, and however you build your ofrenda, it's right. Now, another difference from Halloween is that Día de Muertos isn't just one day. For some families, it can be up to a week or more of remembrance. From October 27th to November 2nd, some communities dedicate each day to different types of souls. For example, the 27th for pets, the 28th for those who died suddenly, the 29th for those lost to drowning, and the 30th for forgotten souls with no family to remember them. Then come the traditional days. November 1st is Día de los Inocentes, or Día de los Angelitos, which honors children. And November 2nd, Día de los Fieles Difuntos, the Day of the Faithful Departed, which honors adults. Now, it's important to know that these days and the meaning of those days can change from one region to another, or even one family to another. But it's important to know that every loss, every soul has its day. Now, across Mexico, Día de Muertos looks, sounds, tastes, and feels a little different everywhere. In Oaxaca, the streets burst with color. Families build towering ofrendas and create intricate tapetes de arena, sand carpets. Comparsas, joyful parades with music and masks, wind through the neighborhoods. On some altars, you'll spot things like tlayudas, giant crispy tortillas, sort of like tostadas, and maybe some mezcal. In Michoacán, especially on the island of Janitzio and Lake Pátzcuaro, families head out by night, boats lit with candles, to keep vigil in the cemetery. In Purépecha communities, you'll often find chocolate caliente or champurrado as offerings. Now, here in the Yucatán Peninsula, the Maya tradition Hanal Pichan, food for the souls, takes center stage. In places like Pomuch, Campeche, families carefully clean and redress the bones of their loved ones, an act of love and remembrance. People can share things like mukpipollo, a large tamal that is cooked underground, and xtabentún, a honey and anise liqueur. And come hungry because the mukpipollo is so good. In Puebla and many central states, cemeteries come alive at night. Music, candles, and pan de muerto, sweet bread of the dead, fill the air. And if you're looking for sugar skull craftsmanship, Toluca, in the state of Mexico, is famous for its alfeñiques. In Veracruz, you'll often hear the son jarocho and see dancers perform la bruja, while families visit ofrendas. Tamales, mole, atole, and sweetbreads reflect the warmth and the flavor of this Gulf state. And then there's La Ciudad de Mexico, Mexico City. Remember that giant parade in the James Bond movie Spectre? That parade didn't exist before the film, but it inspired a new tradition. The mega desfile de Día de Muertos launched in 2016 and now draws crowds by the millions. There's also the Desfile de Catrinas, where floats, costumes, and makeup turn art into ritual. Down in Xochimilco, families decorate flower-covered trajineras, canal boats, and glide by candlelight to music and laughter. Those same waters become a nighttime stage for La Llorona, a long-running theatrical performance that echoes through the canals. Ancient and modern, quiet and loud, sacred and joyful. You can find it all at once. Now, you can't talk about Día de Muertos without mentioning two of its most famous and delicious elements: pan de muerto, the sweet bread of the dead, and calaveritas de azúcar, the sugar skulls. Pan de muerto represents the cycle of life and death. Its round shape stands for the circle of life, and the bone-shaped pieces on top symbolize the departed. Some historians believe it echoes ancient offerings made from amaranth during Mictēcacihuātl, the Aztec festival honoring the dead. But the bread we know today actually traces back to Spain, where All Saints and All Souls Day breads merged with older customs from Spain's own pagan days. The circle and crossbones came to represent the soul's eternal journey. When the Spanish brought their traditions to Mexico, they blended with indigenous ritual, and something new was born. Pan de muerto, the bread of remembrance, sweetened by the land that adopted it. Then you have the calaveritas de azúcar, tiny, bright, and playful. They're molded from sugar paste, decorated with colorful icing, and often carry the names of loved ones, sometimes even the living, as a cheerful reminder that life is brief, so smile while you can. Sugar skulls came from European sugar art once used in religious feasts, but here in Mexico they took on their own meaning, turning death into celebration and sweetness into memory. Because here, even death tastes sweet. For me, Día de Muertos is one of the clearest reminders of why the culture here in Mexico is so special. We don't just remember the past, we invite it to live with us for a little while. Whether you build an altar, light a candle, or just take a quiet minute to think of someone, you're part of a tradition that's been passed down for generations. Of course, this is the short version. Día de Muertos has enough depth to fill a 4-hour documentary. I just didn't have the heart to put you through that. Well, not this time. So if you've got an ofrenda this year, what's on it? Who are you honoring? Tell us down here in the comments somewhere, and if your family does something unique, let us know. Share it with the group. For those of you watching this episode, I have something very special. For Día de Muertos fans and supporters of the channel, I've put together a limited collection of t-shirts, hats, bags over at El Mercadito Mola over on Spring. All inspired by the traditions we explored in this episode and other episodes, and the Smiths. The images and the links are right below the video somewhere, and use your discount code. And to go deeper, I've linked the books that I use for research in my episodes, plus the gear I use for voiceovers and filming here in the Yucatan. It's all in my Amazon store. I make a small commission, but it doesn't affect your price at all. If you know someone who should know more about Día de Muertos, there are bells and buttons down here to help make that happen. Well, friend, I'm Andrew. Thanks for watching The Mysteries, and until next time, adios.